Have you ever found yourself trapped in a lie so deep you start believing it yourself? That's exactly where I found myself on a rainy Thursday afternoon in a small bookstore in Seattle. There I was, standing behind a folding table covered with hardcovers, a banner above my head with a name I had no business answering to: Liam Harper. I wasn't Liam Harper. I was Daniel Bradford, a struggling author who hadn't had a decent idea in years. Yet, here I was, on a book tour, signing copies of a novel I didn't write, for a crowd that wasn't even here for me. Let me rewind a bit. It all started a month ago when I found myself at the end of another rejection letter. My agent, with her overly sweet but painfully honest tone, had given me the news I'd been expecting. "Daniel, it's just not hitting the mark." Those words felt like a punch in the gut. 3 years without a single book published. 3 years of staring at a blank page, with a brain that refused to cooperate. Meanwhile, Liam Harper, my best friend from college and a literary sensation, was off on a world tour promoting his 4th bestseller. One night, as I drowned my sorrows in whiskey at Liam's apartment, he had kindly lent it to me while he was away, came across his fan mail. Hundreds of letters from adoring fans, praising his prose, dissecting his metaphors, and asking for his next signing. And then, an idea struck me. What if I pretended to be him, just for a little while? Just to see if I could find some inspiration by stepping into his shoes, feeling what it was like to be adored, to be wanted as a writer. At first, it was harmless. I responded to a few fan letters as Liam, and the thrill of it gave me a creative rush. My fingers danced over the keyboard again, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. But then came the invitation, a book signing in Seattle, a spot Liam had neglected to cancel. And suddenly, my harmless little game became a full-blown performance. I told myself it was just a few hours, just a few signatures. I'd be in and out, no one would be the wiser. But nothing ever goes according to plan, does it? The bookstore was packed. I plastered on a smile, trying to embody Liam's easy charisma, but my palms were slick with sweat. I barely heard what I was saying to the readers, my voice echoing strangely in my ears, until I saw her. She was standing near the back, looking somewhat out of place with her oversized glasses and her notebook clutched tightly against her chest. She was staring right at me, or rather, at the man I was pretending to be. Her expression was a mixture of awe and hesitation, and before I knew it, she was standing in front of me, her voice a little shaky as she spoke. "Mr. Harper, I'm Emma Wallace, book critic for the Literary Post," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "I've read everything you've ever written. Your work it's remarkable." My heart pounded in my chest. Of all people to meet, it had to be my biggest fan. I swallowed hard, shook her hand, and managed to say, "Thank you, Emma. That means a lot coming from you." She blushed, and I realized I hadn't let go of her hand yet. I quickly released it, feeling my cheeks warm up too. I had read her reviews before, brutally honest, insightful, and, as it turned out, extremely influential. She had a reputation for seeing through pretension. If anyone could see through my act, it was her. And yet, something kept me in the moment. Maybe it was the way her eyes lit up as she talked about literature, or the way she asked questions with genuine curiosity, not the fawning adoration I'd seen from other fans. We spoke for what felt like hours about books, characters, the writing process. She wasn't just interested in Liam Harper, the persona. She seemed genuinely interested in the person behind the name. The problem was, that person was me, not Liam. Over the next few days, we kept running into each other. At coffee shops, bookstores, even a panel discussion where I had to bluff my way through answers to questions about my latest book. Emma had this way of asking the right questions, making me feel like I was more than the sum of my failures. I found myself looking forward to our conversations, her laughter, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. But as we grew closer, the weight of my deception grew heavier. I knew I was walking on a tightrope, and the further I went, the thinner the line became. I wanted to tell her the truth, but how could I? How could I tell her that the man she had admired wasn't real, that everything she believed about me was a lie? And yet, every time I opened my mouth to confess, her hand would brush mine, or she'd look at me with those eyes that seemed to see something worth believing in, and I'd lose my nerve. The tour dragged on. My facade was getting harder to maintain, and my guilt gnawed at me like a relentless tide, eroding whatever was left of my integrity. I wanted to be the man she thought I was, but I couldn't. I wasn't Liam Harper. I was just Daniel Bradford, a nobody who'd been stupid enough to think he could rewrite his own story by pretending to be someone else. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a small gathering, a literary event in a dimly lit cafe in Portland. Emma and I had spent the day together, talking about everything from poetry to our childhood dreams. She was leaning in close, her shoulder brushing against mine, her voice a soft murmur in my ear. I wanted to kiss her, I wanted to tell her the truth, and I wanted to do both at the same time. "I need to tell you something," I began, my voice barely a whisper. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't pull away. "What is it?" she asked, her tone gentle, encouraging. "I'm not," I hesitated, swallowing hard. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm not who you think I am," I finally said, the words tumbling out of me like a confession. Her brow furrowed, confusion darkening her gaze. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. This was at the moment of truth, the moment I could either lose her forever or finally set things right. "I'm not Liam Harper," I admitted, my voice hoarse. "I'm Daniel Bradford, just a guy who's been struggling to write his own story for a long time." "I'm sorry, Emma. I never meant to deceive you. I didn't know how to stop." There was a long, painful silence. I watched her expression shift from confusion to hurt, and finally, something I couldn't quite read. She stood up, her chair scraping against the wooden floor, and for a moment, I thought she was going to walk away, to leave me standing there with the truth hanging in the air like an accusation. But then she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do it?" I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of my actions settle on my shoulders. "I needed inspiration," I confessed. "I needed to know what it felt like to be a writer again, to be wanted, to matter. And then I met you, and everything got so complicated. I've been living in Liam's shadow for so long, and I thought, just for once, I could be someone worth knowing." Emma looked at me for a long time, her eyes searching mine. I held my breath, waiting for her to say something, to yell at me, to call me a liar. Instead, she did something I hadn't expected. She smiled a small, sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. "You are worth knowing, Daniel," she said quietly. "You don't need to be someone else for that, but you do need to be honest." And with that, she walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling more exposed than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I watched her go, knowing that I had lost her, at least for now. But maybe, just maybe, I had found something more important myself. The rest of the tour went by in a blur. I stopped pretending. I stopped lying. I even canceled the last few signings and went back home, back to my little apartment with its peeling paint and creaky floors. I started writing again, but this time wrote as myself. I wrote about my failures, my hopes, my regrets. And somehow, the words came easier. Weeks passed, and then, one day a letter arrived. It was from Emma. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, afraid of what it might say, afraid that it would be the final nail in the coffin of whatever fragile connection we had built. But when I read her words, I couldn't help but smile. "Dear Daniel," the letter began, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I've decided I'd like to get to know the real you. Not the writer, not the persona. Just you, if you're willing, that is." I laughed, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I picked up a pen, and for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I wanted to write back. The end, or maybe, the beginning. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching.